however scary. Sometimes it's asteroids and meteors. Today it's earthquakes.
Say that an earthquake with the power of last night's Mexico tremor could happen here and may be more damaging because the San Andreas fault is located under populated areas. So how about that early warning system?
Right now in the Pacific Northwest, I'd be considering moving. Seriously. The gist of it is this. The federal government estimates 13,000 Americans will die in a major earthquake and tsunami in the Pacific Northwest. It's not a question of whether, but when. This earthquake is coming, and it's overdue.
Scientists and FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, are warning of a pending doom for the Pacific Northwest. An earthquake along a little-known fault line that would kill thousands.
Everything west of Interstate 5 is gone. That's Seattle, Tacoma, Portland and Olympia, Salem and Eugene, wiped out. Altogether about 7 million people.
Of storm-related emergency alerts overnight. KSBY reporter Kelsey McFarland is live in the studio with us this evening. Kelsey, you found some of those alerts apparently not intended.
Right, Dan, you either saw it on TV or your smartphone. Severe thunderstorms, evacuation warnings, and flash flood warnings. But 2 more were added to that mix that weren't supposed to be there. Residents across the Central Coast received up to 24 emergency alerts, either on their TV screens or their cell phones.
Well, I saw a bunch of thunderstorm alerts on TV interrupting the Weather Channel.
Bob Shambron wasn't sure if he should take it seriously.
So I was just thinking, oh, ho-hum, yeah, maybe it'll rain, but probably not. So they tend to overwarn, but then that creates kind of another problem, which is that people don't take the warning seriously.
Thunder, lightning, rain, even hail did make their appearance, but dozens of the alerts that came with all of that weren't supposed to, including an earthquake alert out of Santa Barbara County.
So this jurisdiction that was putting out that message wanted to put out an evacuation warning message for the Alamo fire area, and they slipped up and accidentally put in earthquake.
Some also saw a special marine warning meant only for mariners.
Those were done in mistake because of a coding on the emergency alert system equipment that's received at radio stations and TV stations. So that's something we're going to follow up on.
Annoying or not, officials say it is vital to pay attention to the alerts because events like flash flooding can be deadly.
In February of 1998, unfortunately, we had 2 California Highway Patrol officers and a Napomo resident killed on 166 because of some flooding that occurred and actually took out the roadway.
Some of those alerts may also have been doubled up because radio and TV stations here
scientists say that an earthquake with the power of last night's Mexico tremor could happen here and may be more damaging because the San Andreas Fault is located under populated areas. So how about that early warning system? When the 8.1 earthquake rattled the southern coast of Mexico Thursday night, a loud alarm could be heard going off in Mexico City, hundreds of miles away. It started 1 minute before the shaking reached the capital.
It was actually set up for the capital, and if you actually lived on the West Coast, you were the early warning system.
Mexico's system was installed after their devastating 1985 quake that killed 10,000 people. Last night, waves detected near fault lines outside Mexico City triggered the alarms as seen in this video tweeted out by a government official. So why doesn't Los Angeles have a system like Mexico's?
In order for it to become a priority, we'd probably have to have some sort of damaging earthquake in the United States.
After concern that President Trump planned to cut funding for the early warning system, Congress has now awarded $4.9 million each year to deploy the technology. But Tom Heaton at Caltech says that's half of what should be put into the system, and the timetable for implementation is unclear.
It takes some time to actually put one of those things in place and to build it. It requires quite a bit of software development.
And the U.S. technology is already being used by BART in the Bay Area, and it may be used by LA Metro in a year and a half. The hope is that not too far away, Angelinos will be warned about an earthquake by getting an alert on their cell phones.
There is some disquieting news about the San Andreas Fault. Experts say they've detected new areas of motion all along the fault, and they're calling the motion significant. So you're wondering, does that mean the fault is getting ready to rumble? If you live in California, you want to know. Obviously, the San Andreas is California's most volatile fault line. Now, scientists at the University of Hawaii are saying that they're now seeing confirmed movement of the Earth's crust that has long been predicted by computer models. So, yeah.
And perhaps the worst part of all of this, these sorts of earthquakes happen at regular intervals in exactly this part of the world, have forever. On average, according to seismologists, about every 240 years. So when was the last one of these? These massive 9.2 or so earthquakes? Well, the last one was more than 300 years ago, the year 1700. It struck in the Pacific Northwest and sent a 600-foot wave of water all the way to Japan. So right now, on average, the Pacific Northwest is decades overdue.
Just are out with a very startling warning that Southern California is overdue for a major and possibly catastrophic earthquake. A new study says it's expected to hit along the San Andreas Fault north of Los Angeles. It could have a magnitude of 7.5 or higher. That's big. For the first time, scientists are closer to knowing when it could strike. CBS News science and futurist contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at the University of New York City. Good morning to you, Professor. When I went to see you in the green room, you said, I'm here with doom and gloom. But let me tell you, I grew up in high school and junior high. We've been hearing about an earthquake coming in California for years. What makes this different?
Well, before it was all hocus pocus and black magic predicting earthquakes. And I was born in California, 10 miles from the San Andreas Fault, living under the shadow of the big one. Now we can quantify this. And we now know that the San Andreas Fault is locked, loaded, and ready to rumble. We now realize that the people of Los Angeles are living on borrowed time. We now know that by digging into the soil, we can go down 1,200 years into the past, looking at soil laid down hundreds of years ago, and we find 10 major earthquakes in the last 1,000 years. The difference in time is roughly 100 years on average. The last big one was 160 years ago. So according to one calculation, we're 60 years overdue for another big one.
You're talking about the great 1857 quake, right?
That's right. It was a huge 7.9 earthquake that was so big it actually liquefied the soil north of Los Angeles, like halfway between Bakersfield and L.A.
And the tremors in that quake, by some reports, it lasted up to 3 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're not talking about just a few seconds, like maybe in a Northridge type earthquake. We're talking about an earthquake that lasts for minutes. And also the U.S. Geologic Survey did an estimate of property damage. What could happen if the 1857 earthquake happens today? The numbers are frightening.